Hey guys, I am Ibigandscary. I'm bringing you another StarCraft 2 replay, this time featuring in the top right hand side forsakeNXE, our blue Terran, and his opponent in our bottom right is Chromatic, our Periwinkle Zerg. Both players are in Masters. We're on Daybreak. This is a friendly match, I believe. I mean, you can't really be on the ladder if you've got Periwinkle Zerg, but I have to admit that that is a problem. I think that there should be more color choices while you're on the ladder. I think you should have like one jersey and a second jersey so that if somebody picks the same color as you, then you just have your fallback one just like they do in soccer. I strongly believe that that should be something that we do. Something that Terrans do all the time is position their supply depot just north of the ramp to start on that nice, sexy wall off. No super early gas, no super early pool, so both players are beginning to sit back, relax, go into macro mode. First Overlord well on his way over to Forsake's home base, but we don't see any scouting SCV from Forsake just yet, and I think that's normal. The last Zerg versus Terran versus Zerg that I cast with Forsake in it had a very early barracks, and he relied upon the Reaper to do the scouting, and that's something that a lot of Terrans are doing right now because it's very, very effective. We do see the barracks being produced, and the positioning of that barracks is rather telling. The Reaper will be coming out of that, not because we know that the refinery has been thrown down, and it has been thrown down, but because the barracks position just off to the left, which is where you would want your Reaper to pop out so it can pop down that wall. This positioning is just far enough away that when the drone arrives on scene, it will slink right by that supply depot and not see the barracks. Unbeknownst to him, though, Chromatic has not decided to throw out a drone just yet. No scouting drone at all, actually. He's throwing down a very, very, very early hatchery at the 15 supply mark, and it looks like he's going to be waiting for a 17 pool right behind that. I think that hatchery might not have been a 15 supply mark, I think. I might be wrong on that one, but regardless, it's a very greedy build. Which is totally understandable given the size of this map, given the current meta arrangement. We can see a spawning pool and an extractor thrown down pretty much at the exact same time. I have to admit that I think Chromatic might be a little slipping on his macro, just a hair, because he's typing so much. I mean, we can check out that message log later on, but they have been chatting back and forth, which makes sense because it is pretty much a friendly match between friends. First Reaper on the production tab, almost going to be popping out in just a couple of seconds. Immediately rallied over to the home base. Look at that rally. That is awesome. It's going to be popping up this little gap right here probably and bringing himself down just behind the mineral line, just seeing absolutely everything. Sees that the spawning pool has finished. Two queens immediately popping up on the production tab. Second Reaper underway at the exact same time a command center gets thrown down. So really, Forsake needs to keep this Reaper alive, bar none, and he's not going to have a lot of problem in the next couple of seconds. No Zerglings were being produced. The queens are only about halfway done. All he has to be careful for is just to properly micro away from the drones that were pulled off, even managing to score a drone kill while it's off of creep. A huge win for him. Absolutely massive, actually. Factory being thrown up just to the side of the barracks. The barracks repositioned and thrown on a reactor that the factory is going to be using. Probably going to see some Hellions on the field if this mimics the build that we saw for Forsaken in the last matchup. Second Reaper arrives just in the nick of time to meet the Queen, just in the nick of time to see his buddy die. Absolutely fantastic. Some Zerglings are on the field, just 4 right now, but with 0 creep spread, I think Forsaken is not going to have any problem at all keeping them alive as long as he stays well aware of the reaching arms of those queens. Saturation at the natural begins to get underway. It looks like the command center is almost done down at the natural for Forsaken, as he looks like he's taking just a little bit of a respite. We can notice that because the reactor is being constructed on the barracks, no Reapers are being constructed on that. Wow, another command center. So Forsaken is definitely being ballsy. Don't think this is going to be for a third. This is going to be more for a macro command center so he can get up the infrastructure in order for him to take a third. The third on Daybreak is incredibly exposed and very far away from his own natural. Sometimes you can hear that tech people will take this one just kind of as a forward engagement, but Forsaken really likes his mines, and I feel like this is a perfect place to throw down a handful of mines and kind of funnel all of these Zerglings through. Speaking of Zerglings, now that speed is done, 8 drones are on the production tab now, so we know that this is not like an all-in crazy aggression coming out of Chromatic, but I think what Chromatic wants to do is just check, see if the orbital command is up, and this is perfect timing for him. He's going to be popping in just whenever the Hellions are done, so that the first 2 Hellions are left to fend for themselves, and the Zerglings can have a very aggressive posture back down on the low ground. going to be doing quite a lot of damage to the orbital command. Where is the lift up from Forsake? I don't think he knows. I don't think he can hold this. I think if he leaves this on the ground, that orbital is going to be taking quite a lot of damage. There goes into the red. Chromatic pulling off half of his Zerglings to chase down those Hellions. Those Hellions having quite a hard time against them without Blue Flame. And oh no! The Zerglings get pulled off from attacking the orbital command, and only with 100 hit points left, this SCV slinks down and begins to repair it, and he just barely saves that orbital command. Even if it had gone down, remember there was a third up in the main base, but that's really not something that Forsake wants to use. Forsake really didn't want to use that third for a natural. He wanted to use it for a third. Speaking of third, Chromatic has taken his hatchery being constructed, and with that goes down all the gas. We have 3 geysers on the production tab right now, and the one in the main has been fully saturated for quite a while now, I think. He started it back up just to get the gas necessary to start that +1/+1 that is underway. And see that it is +1 melee, which means that we will be seeing, hopefully, that Ultralisk and maybe some Mutalisks thrown into the mix. That's very, very popular late game composition for the Zerglings. Zerglings really do not want to engage here because Forsaken can just take refuge behind the mineral lines, but Chromatic has to do that unless he wants to cancel his hatchery, swinging in from both sides with all of his Zerglings, but they're being funneled into a really, really tight cluster, allowing the AoE from all of those Hellions, even though a lot of them have taken damage, to just crush all of those Zerglings, and they go down in a blaze of glory. 975 minerals lost to just the 200 from Forsaken. And with that goes a massive amount of damage to the hatchery. I don't think he's going to be able to hold it with 3 queens waddling their way up. You know what would have helped this right here? Creep spread. It's pretty hard to do it whenever the hatchery's not constructed at the third, but you can start it down at the natural. It looks like he's just now started with a single creep tumor there. Chromatic barely pushes away all the Hellions, only the weakest ones going down in that last push from all those Zerglings. A Spore Crawler being constructed over by the hatchery, probably to hold off the inevitable drop play coming out of the Terran. Creep spread is underway, but without that creep, the queens have to waddle back home for fear of a drop down by the lair. Lair has been constructed, a macro hatch right next to it. Very defensive positioning for those Evo chambers. I think Chromatic really doesn't want to use them as the kind of pseudo wall-off that you get here for Zerg. Not traditionally, it's recently come into play. Spire also on the production tab. Baneling Nest is done. It's starting to work on those centrifugal hooks. Forsake's still not comfortable enough to push out and take his third. Instead, he's still working on that infrastructure, producing so many barracks back at home, one of which has a tech lab working on that combat shield. Hey, we have Stim yet? We do. Stim totally done. +1/+1 also going to be finishing in a hot second. And with that, we can see that the army is beginning to grow. We have a Marauder on the production tab, 2 medevacs on the production tab, armory on the production tab, and with all that stuff, we're going to see a very intimidating ground force coming out of Forsaken in a relatively short amount of time. However, Chromatic's Spire is going to be finishing. He's got enough gas for almost 6 Mutalisks, and that's enough to do some harassment of his own. Finally, he's going to be able to turn the tables on Forsaken. He's hopefully going to be able to do some damage. Looks like all the Hellions have been whittled down to the point where a handful of Zerglings are capable of forcing them down. Every single one of the Hellions do go down. 6 Mutalisks are now on the production tab, and centrifugal hooks are going to be finishing. So even though Forsaken has the infrastructure up necessary to be aggressive, I don't think it might be the wisest choice. We see 13 drones on the production tab, but that production tab could swing over to the other side of things in a very severe way. So many Zerglings means that you can have so many Banelings, and Banelings can do quite a number on the Marines, especially when they're only supported by 2 medevacs. This is definitely enough to be aggressive. This is definitely enough to be a drop play, but I think if there is going to be any aggression coming out of Forsaken, it needs to be kind of cat and mouse. It needs to be tongue-in-cheek, and all it needs to be doing is allowing him to grab this third. I think really Forsaken's going to be able to hit his stride once he gets that third, but until then he's in a bit of an awkward position. 32 Zerglings on the production tab, +2/+2 is going to be finishing. Oh, +1 range attack, but where are those Mutalisks? Where are they doing anything? They're not being aggressive at all. They're just kind of sitting back at home. They haven't been revealed yet, and I don't believe there's been any scan at all, but I hope they don't reveal themselves by pushing into this Marine and a medevac force. I would much rather them see them pop down into the third location, because really there's no static air defense there at all. There's no missile turrets at all. Forsaken has been rebuffed. The Mutalisks, though, swinging right on top of so many Marines. Excellently positioned there, but oh no, they are caught between a rock and a hard place. The Zerglings coming in from the right, Mutalisks from the left, and with the Marines spread out so much in defense of the Banelings, the Mutalisks have free reign to pick away at them. A really, really nice engagement for Chromatic. All of a sudden, the resources lost tab is now neck and neck, and the Mutalisks and Zerglings giving chase all the way back home as that +1 finishes. 7 more Mutalisks hit the production tab. +2/+2 on the way for Forsaken, just to make those Marines a little bit more intimidating. But oh, 3 kills on that Widow Mine. But if it hadn't fired yet, it would have done significant damage to all these Mutalisks. As things are now, the Mutalisks are in pristine health, going to be taking a little bit of extra damage from that missile turret. But with the bunker position there, oh, here comes the Banelings throwing down massive amount of damage, killing pretty much every single one of those Marines. But still, that missile turret remains intact. And with the supporting Marines from the north side, it looks like Chromatic is going to have to retreat for the time being. Infestor Pit getting thrown down. So many Zerglings on the production tab too, and +2 Zergling flyer damage on the production tab. So those Mutalisks are just going to get more and more intimidating, more and more of a bother for Forsaken. Forsaken will be bothered by Chromatic's Mutalisks. There we go. That's what I'm trying to say. +3 weapons, +2 armor going to be finishing for Forsaken as +3 weapons starts up. Man, the creep spread just can't catch a break. There goes the scan, cutting to shreds pretty much every single one of those creep termers, but at the same time, the Zerglings and Mutalisks together, again, crushing every single bit of standing army coming out of Forsaken. And really, Forsaken is catching a break by holding those Mutalisks at bay, but really he's just buying time. He needs to get up more of a standing force. He needs to get up and keep these Mutalisk count in check, because once that hive is done, once we start seeing Ultralisks, he's not going to need the Mutalisks to be in the main force in order to crush all of the Marines that can be popping out in random different corners. He can just rely on the Ultralisks, and because of that, these Mutalisks are going to be terrifying. They're going to be able to pop off to any one of the 3 bases that Forsaken has right now, and it's going to stop Forsaken from getting a 4th. So Forsaken needs to start doing damage to the economy. He needs to start doing stuff to keep the Marines in check, the drone count in check. He needs to keep those Ultralisks in check. He needs to make it so the economy's not good enough to support a huge number of Ultralisks. One drop gets shut down on the bottom left-hand side, and with the Zerglings so very, very quickly reinforcing the top left, that drop also gets cut down. Enough time for the Mutalisks to arrive on scene to kill all of those medevacs. Oh, but here we go. The Marines retreating onto the high ground with so many Widow Mines positioning there. Those Zerglings have to be very, very careful, but Chromatic showing some excellent micro, pulling back his Zerglings, making it so that they can attack the Widow Mines and only take minor damage from the splash damage, only sacrificing a single Zergling at a time, sometimes only a small cluster. But so many Marines. Oh, an excellent engagement. Wow! Every single one of the Mutalisks melt away. Only 2 kills on that Widow Mine, but in reality, that Widow Mine took every single one of those Mutalisks down into the red, and allowing the Marines just to mop them up. 17 Mutalisks on the production tab, but that is so much money that should have been spent on Ultralisks later on. Ultralisk Cavern is only halfway done right now. We see +3/+3 on the production tab. Chitinous plating hasn't been started yet, but we can expect it sooner rather than later. Some good Baneling hits, but only one medevac retreats with the entire lives of its complement of units. The Marines again pushing in from the south side. This is so back and forth, so cat and mouse. Both players are really just buying time, but Forsaken's time is running out. The Ultralisk Cavern is now done. We're going to see that the upgrades are really hitting full swing for him. There goes the chitinous plating, and once that's done, those Ultralisks are going to be incredibly intimidating against the Marine heavy force that Forsaken has out right now. Baneling hits are really brutal against all these Marines, but we can see that the 4th has been started. At least it's being constructed back at home, and these Mutalisks are having to take some major hits. They're having to partake in the slugging match between the 2 units, between the Widow Mines, between the Marines, and really you want these Mutalisks to be doing strike and retreat combat. That you want them to come in and hit down this missile turret and then just go to town on the mineral line there, focusing down that missile turret just like that, just doing so much damage so very, very quickly that the missile turret really doesn't have enough time to react and be cost effective on these Mutalisks. The Mutalisks retreating after doing just a little bit of damage, really not taking down the mineral line, but stunning the mining there for a little bit. And that's the first economic damage we've seen out of Chromatic for way too long, way too long. And it's beginning to show. Forsake now has a significant boost in his supply over Chromatic, and Chromatic has to deal with this large cluster of Marines, and more importantly, a large cluster of medevacs supporting those Marines. Good splits on the ground really mitigate the amount of damage taken from those Banelings, but finally an Ultralisk waddling into the field. Chitinous plating is done. +3/+3 will be finishing at the end of this engagement. Only a handful of Mutalisks remain, only 3 Mutalisks, and they're going to be trying to chase down and do some damage to these medevacs, but really the medevac count is sky high right now. But man, really not high for too much longer. Finally the Mutalisks go down from the supporting strikes of the medevacs, Marines, as well as the Widow Mines underneath. Oh, but this is an intimidating force. So many Ultralisks already out on the field. No detection to Scott. That Widow Mine scoring 9 kills right then and there. And the 4th has been saturated fully with SCVs and complemented with mules, and it's beginning to warp into a planetary fortress. And that's going to be a hard point. That's going to be a place that Forsaken's going to be able to pull back, and finally Forsaken is maxed. He's got the infrastructure up that he needs at home. He's got that +3/+3 fully upgraded Marines, and he is really making this unit composition work. He has navigated the rough patch whenever he was working towards this, and now every ounce of money that he makes he can spend on making units. He has the infrastructure up at home to produce Marauders, which are really going to be helpful against these Ultralisks, and I think we're going to start to see the aggression swing in the favor of Forsaken. Forsaken really wants to micro back these Zerglings back into the minefield, but no, the Widow Mine fires off to the right side, probably doing more damage to the Marines than anything else. The Widow Mine's now doing a lot of damage to the Zerglings. Almost all the Zerglings have gone down, but so many Ultralisks remain. Many Mutalisks swinging into the match. 10 Mutalisks coming in from Chromatic, finally doing some of that anti-air damage to the medevacs. The medevacs and Marines finally retreating back to the planetary fortress, but I don't think there are enough Ultralisks on the field necessary to take down that planetary fortress, and without the support from the Ultralisks, the Mutalisks really have to retreat, because the Marines are incredibly cost effective against those Mutalisks. Remember, we had 10 at the start, now we're just down to 5, and only a handful of Ultralisks remaining. 2 Ultralisks on the production tab, but 0 Zerglings. Where are those Zerglings? Okay, goodness. I was thinking he wasn't making any Zerglings at all. I'm like, that'd be a bad idea. Getting those Zerglings out again will allow him to trigger those Widow Mines by only sacrificing 1 or 2 of them at a time. Some players will sacrifice the Ultralisks, having the Ultralisks go in and kind of tank all that damage, but with proper micro you can be significantly more cost effective with the Zerglings, as well as the AoE afforded by the Banelings. You really just can't go wrong having Ultralisks supported by the Zerglings, but you don't have anti-air potential. You don't have the possibility to knock down these medevacs. The Mutalisks have been keeping them in check. Ooh, we have 2 Vipers on the production tab. Fantastic. Let's see how Chromatic can use those Vipers, because that Binding Cloud is absolutely fantastic against them, as well as the Yoink ability kind of pulling them back into the waiting folds of a couple of those Mutalisks. So much AoE being thrown down on all those Zerglings. Oh my goodness. And what? The entire force of Chromatic just gets melted away. Those Mutalisks just in just sheer depression, sacrificing themselves onto the Marine and Marauder ball. And it looks like Forsaken's not going to be stopped and pushing off to the top left-hand side, dealing a death blow to that area. A small strike force right here. I hope those were Mutalisks. Please don't be the Vipers. Okay, yeah, the Vipers back at home, taking a little bit of health from the hatchery. Wow, a transfuse going down on the Ultralisk. Really great control there from Chromatic, wasting a little bit of that energy to keep that Ultralisk up, allowing him to rebuff that strike of Marauders and Marines, keeping this hatchery up, which is so very, very important as we reach this late game kind of a stall out moment. Neither player really can afford to take the north and the south hatcheries or mineral lines, or I don't know, expansion points. So everybody's got all the bases they're going to get, and frankly Chromatic hasn't been as cost effective as Forsaken. Finally we see what the armory was for, getting out a single Thor from Forsaken. I was wondering what that armory was for. I don't think he ever got an upgrade for anything coming out of it. I think it might have been for a Hellbat drop. that just never happened. Here comes another push. The Zergling numbers are not nearly as sufficient to strike this down, but so many Ultralisks really just chewing through with a really nice concave on them. Forced to retreat though once they reach the Thor. Can't really take them down. The Mutalisks also have to be very careful against that AoE. Not supported by any of the Zerglings. The Ultralisks are having a difficult time dealing with the Stutter Step Micro from the Marines, but they have managed to take down the Thor. I think it's difficult to see underneath all those Mutalisks. With only a handful of the Marines left, all the Ultralisks have gone down, but the Mutalisks deal a death blow to those Marines. Got to be careful with those Medivacs kind of flying around empty, leaving behind all the Marines. But again, Forsaken taking an aggressive posture. He spent down pretty much all of his bank, but Chromatic's not much, isn't in much of a better state at all. The Ultralisks once again striking in, but this time supported by a healthy swath of Mutalisks. The Zerglings getting melted away pretty much instantly. Got to be careful with those Widow Mines, but the Widow Mine number is actually beginning to kind of suffer. We only have 8 on the field, but where are they? It looks like they're back by the choke. Again, Stutter stepping away. This Widow Mine has already spent its charge. Got to be careful with those Banelings, and that's evidently what those Zerglings have been doing, is morphing into the Banelings. I think what Chromatic needs is just one really good Baneling strike on this main bio ball, and with that he'll be able to steamroll in and take out this 4th, which is really key right now to Forsaken's economy. Vipers are finally on the scene, but are they going to be able to spend any of their energy, full energy right now, throwing down the Binding Cloud, but really not doing anything because of the Stutter Step Micro coming out of Forsaken, retreating very quickly. The Ultralisks showing us just how durable they are. Not taking much damage at all from the Widow Mines. The Banelings and Zerglings going hunting for those Widow Mines, striking them down with just a fiery passion. However, Forsaken is once again just 100% on top of his macro. 10 Marines, 2 Marauders, and 2 Medivacs just continually churning out this bio ball, which is incredibly cost effective and frankly good at dealing with any unit being produced by Chromatic. Even better whenever he's not microing them. Every single one of those Mutalisks go down. A massive loss there, but a huge swell of units. Those Zerglings coming in, trying for a surround, unfortunately with the Medivacs above, picking them up and leaving them to eat a lot of strikes from those Widow Mines. Oh, here comes another just nice surround. Another fast pickup from Forsaken, this time only getting about a quarter of his forces, forcing the rest of them to retreat back to the Planetary Fortress, which is an engagement that Chromatic just does not want right now. This is a total slugging match. You really would expect to... Oh, missed that. When did that happen? I'm not 100% sure. Total slugging match except for the drops that I'm missing, evidently. Evidently, Forsaken has been a little bit more aggressive than I was initially giving him credit. The Ultralisk is totally going to go down, and with that, it looks like Chromatic his economy is just totally stunted right now. He doesn't have the mineral income. Look at this long distance mining. That's because the majority of his bases are totally mined out. The 3rd is pretty much spent. Speaking of counterattacks, hey, this one I caught. Chromatic striking down on the bottom right hand side with so many Zerglings, but at the same time, the ever important forward expansion from Chromatic is going to go down. You switch over to the economic tab, we can see that both players under 1,000 right now, but the difference between the two of them is that the hatchery has been completely lost, whereas the orbital is only in about half health, with the Zerglings on hold command, waiting for the Marines and Marauders to re-engage down in the bottom right before he can land those structures. Chromatic has rebuilt that hatchery and fully saturated it. That'll be a definite boost to his mineral income. However, the loss of that forward expansion cannot be understated. That's a huge chunk of money that he's lost because of that. Keeping alive the Zerglings by retreating just a couple of seconds before the Marines and Marauders arrive from Forsaken is definitely a wise decision. However, you can just see how desperately hurt that blow was to the economy. At 123 over 195 right now, he is really hurting for money, and he needs to be able to re-macro, and unfortunately he just doesn't have the money necessary to produce a huge swell of Ultralisks. Going back to the more cost-effective Infestors, and that's going to be absolutely fantastic for him, especially if he can start to fungal growth down a couple of these Medivacs, forcing a very fast retreat from Forsaken. And that's exactly why you miss those drops, is because they're so fast. Throw down a handful of Marauders and they make mince meat out of that hatchery in no time, especially when they're stemmed. And then with a force this large, it takes 2 seconds to target down a hatchery completely. So Chromatic is incredibly on edge. He's going to be relying on just way too much on these Baneling hits to keep this force in check, and without the Ultralisks, his force lacks staying power, and the staying power is exactly what Forsaken has because of so many of those medevacs just keeping his force alive. There goes the Stutter Step Micro, trying to split up his Marines so that he can mitigate the damage, but with so many Marauders in the forward position, he's really going to be absorbing a lot of the Baneling strikes, and with plenty of Marines left, 2 pages of Marines left alive, is going to be targeting down so many of those drones. Oh my goodness. 44 workers killed to just the 31. At the same time, a strike again down on the bottom right-hand side. So many Zerglings doing quite a lot of damage to the orbital command. Forsaken has managed to take down the hatchery once again, though, and is spraying up his Marines, only taking minor damage from the fungal growths. Really wants to get a money fungal growth down on top of these. Where is it? Oh, good lord. There goes the fungal growth. Finally, a small cluster of Marines and Marauders have arrived in the bottom right-hand side to re-secure that expansion, but the hatchery has been built once again at the 4th. This is absolutely epic. However, I feel like Chromatic is beginning to spiral out of control. I feel like he is losing control of this matchup, beginning to rely more and more on Tier 1 units, fully upgraded Tier 1 units. However, the Tier 1 units for the Marines definitely beat fully upgraded Zerglings, especially when supported by a flight of medevacs just this impressive. So, Chromatic needs to do something impressive right now. He's spinning down all the extra gas that he has on those infestors, and that's definitely a wise decision. But without Zerglings and Ultralisks to support them, without them to take a lot of damage to allow these infestors to stay alive long enough to score those money fungals, this is exactly what's going to happen. Hatchery is going to go down once again, and the one in the top left corner has just now started to be constructed, and with that he's going to have to retreat back to the 1 or 2 mineral patches back at the 3rd, which is really not what he wants to do. You switch over to the resource income tab at 150 mineral income, whereas the only 400 for Chromatic. Chromatic is going to absolutely have to tap out once he realizes just how desperately broke he is, and with no units pretty much left to mount any significant offensive, only 3 infestors, a single Viper, handful of Zerglings on the production tab. This is looking incredibly grim for Chromatic, but hats off to him. That was incredibly impressive. I had such a hard time keeping up with the main engagements because there was so much going on there that both players managed to surprise me with drops in the bottom left, bottom right hand corner, taking out entire expansions just because it was happening at the same time as the main engagements. That is impressive. The drones getting pulled, which is never a good sign, even at the 37-minute mark. Finally getting those money fungals down on the medevacs, bringing it back to a more reasonable 10 medevacs on the field. But with 70 Marines, I don't think that there's anything that Chromatic can actually construct. I don't need to speak whatever language this is to realize that he's saying Widow Mines are incredibly overpowered. It's totally true. I feel like something needs to change for the Widow Mines, and I don't know what it is, because I really like their mechanic. I really like how they work and what they cost and where they're constructed from. I love the dynamic between the Marines, Marauders, Medevacs, and Widow Mines. I love it, but I feel like there's something missing. Like we're not getting something. We need to learn something about them. Maybe it might be just as simple as learning that roaches are really good at tanking Widow Mine strikes or something like that. I don't know. I really don't know. If you guys have something on that, that'd be cool if you could comment about it. Regardless, if you have a replay you want me to cast, you could PM me here or on Reddit. One way or another, I will see you guys later. I am Ibigandscary.